Hi, good morning. Greetings and salutations. I come to you from the Harris Teeter Patio, one of the best kept secrets in Charlotte, with this amazing view of uptown Charlotte. And now I'm going to bring you to the other best kept secret in Charlotte, and that would be Mike, who's with Lowry Insurance. How's that for an introduction? Not bad, right? Mike and I connected actually through Bill at Roma Homes. Hey, Bill. And come to find out that Mike is the insurance guy for both Bill and for Anthony Moore of Pike Properties, and you provide their builder's risk insurance.
Right, but their whole, all the insurance for those guys, yes.
Gotcha.
And first, real quick, just want to thank Shannon for having me on as her guest this week. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And to all you guys out there that are watching or will be watching, I just have to say a couple things. First, wow. And then it's like, what the hell are you guys doing tuning in on a Friday morning listening to Shannon and I talk about insurance?
Not working. They're not working.
I know, right?
That's what they're doing. They're looking for the distraction on a Friday morning.
Right.
So you've been working with these guys, and what basically the way that Bill introduced me to you was he said if I really wanted to provide value, and so of course I take advice from people that I know, like, and respect. And here we are. So my understanding is you've saved them both a good chunk of change with really good coverage.
Right. And, in all seriousness, insurance is not a sexy topic. It doesn't move the excitement meter.
It gives me heart palpitations.
Listen to you. So, it's one of those things, though, in all seriousness, that I can't stress upon my clients enough. I really need a good team around them to help their business maximize both their profits and potential. Love them or hate them, you really need a good attorney. Mm-hmm. You need a good attorney that understands real estate law. Mm-hmm. So, somebody that specializes in that area.
Yes.
You need a good CPA.
Oh,
again,
my goodness, yes,
right, a good accountant, good CPA, not just someone that's a generalist, but also that specializes more in the home building, where they understand completed, the percentage of completion or WIP and things like that. You also need a good realtor. It's a key. And even though people have the perception that realtors are dime a dozen,
it's true, but it's not true.
Right. It's true. There are a ton of them out there.
Absolutely.
But how many of them understand not just the business of selling a house, but also when you're dealing with builders, understanding takedowns, understanding development costs, understanding a side of business other than just what they're going to price their house for. There's a lot that goes into understanding that.
Builders are a special breed.
They are. Trust me, I deal.
They have there's a business model. The numbers have to make sense. There's no emotion.
Right.
And I think you're right. Realtors are a dime a dozen. You could go to a party. I always say you could go to a party and throw a rock in any direction, and you could probably hit 5 or 6 of us. I mean, that's just the truth. But I think you want to have a realtor who is going to specialize, that their niche is going to be in what you're doing, and what kind of value and service do they truly provide.
Right. And give you an example too is I think, and unfortunately, a lot of municipalities, a lot of cities, with their house, they don't understand that the cost of buying that land is going to determine what kind of house you're going to put on it. Absolutely. It doesn't matter. It does not matter what somebody thinks it's worth or what a city thinks it's worth. That a builder, when they look at that piece of dirt and they want to take a look at it and say, what can we build on this? That the cost is going to determine right out of the gate, because then you have the development cost and you got to look at the area that you're in. So if you're paying $1 million for a piece of land and you want to subdivide it into 3 or 4 lots, there's only a certain price point you can build. What happens is they have to pay so much for the land. They put
land
in
has gotten expensive. People have gotten proud.
Scarce and expensive. Right? They love what they have.
Hey, I'd like to welcome Joe, Maria to the shoot. Maria's asking about subcontractor coverage.
Right.
Can we cover that a little?
Sure. So, and I didn't mean to digress. I was just saying that one of the things that I like what Shannon does is she does differentiate herself by bringing value and content to her clients. Bringing someone in like me, they can succeed. How can they maximize their potential and profit? It isn't just from the real estate transaction. There's other areas. So if you know good attorneys or good accountants, are good insurance risk managers, are good realtors. I mean, you're building value to the client in other areas other than just what you're in.
I think you're only as strong as the weakest link in your team.
Right.
And one of the things that I really try and do is surround myself by strong people in each of their fields so that I can provide the content, the value to my clients to say, hey, call Mike or call this person or call this person in each of their respective fields where these are professionals, do their job well and also give good service and good pricing.
Well, and to the question too about the subcontractors, you know, I get a lot of calls from builders as well saying, hey, or developers, like, you know, a good developer that can come in and help with this, do the grading work, or you got a good subcontractor. Again, since that's all I do is the home builders, I know I've got a lot of contacts in the building industry. So if I have a builder that's very happy with one of their subcontractors, if I have another builder come to me and say, who is so-and-so using for this or this, I can have had. I think at the end of the day, we're only going to recommend those that we trust as well. So it's kind of, you know, it's not just a, hey, who can you get me to? It's a referral. It's a trusted person. It's someone that you trust working with and know that they want to bring value to that client.
Well, and a lot of builders are very protective of their subcontractors because it's tough to find a good subcontractor. So in full disclosure, we don't give any contacts out without the express permission of the builder and say, hey, is it okay if we give so-and-so your electrician contact?
Sometimes
you got to keep them.
They're very difficult these days in terms of scarcity as well.
Right.
When you're in an economy that's booming like this and building is fine, it's very difficult to find good subcontractors.
So what differentiates you from other insurance guys? And let's get to Maria's subcontractor.
Right, and I will. Sorry, I didn't mean to belabor the point. But real quick, there's probably four things because, like realtors, you know, insurance agents are a dime a dozen. Look, I've always joked in Charlotte, there's a church, a drugstore, a realtor, and an insurance agent on every corner. You know, that's just how many of each of those there are, right? Right. So you know, so what are the things what makes me different from the typical agent or brokers? I think it's really four things. Number one, I specialize in it. It's all I do. You know, I've been in the business since 1993. I've always dealt with contracting accounts, construction accounts, whether it was the street and road, into abatement programs, and then about 10 years ago I dove into the builder.
So really, you're an expert in your field.
Well, it's definitely what I specialize in.
Yeah.
And you know, it's like we talked about, you know, you need a realtor that understands builders. You need an attorney that understands real estate law. You need an accountant that understands a builder on how to do the accounting for them, the methods to use to minimize what you have to pay the IRS. For me, it's specialization. You know, I specialize in the home builder and real estate investor business. It's all I do. I think another thing that I do is it's the flexibility. It's not just a boxed one size fits all or flips, or my largest client builds 1,600 homes a year.
Wow.
And I will work with anybody within those ranges. You know, no one's too small or too big.
Right.
I like to help businesses and help them grow and watch them grow, especially in an economy like this, where it's a prime time to get out there and make your hay before the next turn.
Right.
So it's having the flexibility to help a wide range of people within the industry, and that flexibility has led me into 34 states. You know, I'm licensed in 42, but do business in 34 states with about, I keep using 250 as the number. It's about 275 now. So home builders and real estate investors, about 275 in 34 states. So I'm all over the country, and that's where it brings some value too. Is the expertise is. I get a good sense of what's going on in the market as a whole.
Oh, for sure.
I'm not just in one little pocket like in Charlotte, and that's what differentiates myself a little bit. Is a lot of insurance brokers or agents just stay in a small radius, a 50-mile radius. They stay local.
You're getting the bigger picture.
Right. In my case, being more broader and more global in terms of being around the country, I get a good sense of what's going on in the industry, where something may happen in this state and it comes this way or vice versa. Another thing I think too is there is an exclusiveness to what I do.
How so?
I've got a couple carriers that I am the only agent that has access to them in a 2 or 3 state area.
When you say carriers, what do you mean?
Insurance carriers that provide the actual coverage, the general liability. So I've got a couple of insurance companies that I can add. From a builder's risk standpoint, specific to the real estate investors, is the carrier that I use for these guys. Number one, there's only about 30 or 4 agents in the country that have access to this carrier, but I am the only one in the entire country with this carrier that can do the real estate investors, the flippers on the blanket basis. Where I just write one policy to cover all their work. And that's so 95% of the time when I'm coming in to look at an account, they've never seen the companies that I offer. The agent doesn't have access to. And then I think the last thing is access. You know, I just don't bring on a client, write them, and then move on to the next one and forget about them. You know, there's a phone call away. They're always welcome to call, email, text, however they want to get in touch with me and answer
big.
questions.
There's nothing more frustrating than not being able to get a hold of your contact.
Right, it is. And you know, and that's the one thing that I really hold to a high standard is customer service. That's the one thing we can control. There are a lot of things out there that are out of our control, but we can control customer service to a large degree. So I take pride in that. So it's not only my access, but my account managers have experience, again, with just this industry. So they know how to talk the talk and what kind of coverages are needed for what these clients want. So it's probably those 4 things. Again, didn't mean to belabor the point. So talking about subcontractors, it was a good question she had, is unfortunately, and as you've seen like in the commercials that I do and some of the other marketing stuff, is unfortunately, and this was the big thing that really got me into the home building business and then the real estate investor business through Professor Anthony a couple years ago, was the fact that 9 out of 10 policies that I review exclude work performed by subcontractors. Now let's let that sink in for a second. How much of your work are you subbing out? 100%.
Yeah.
You know, it's the vast majority of what these guys are doing, yet they're paying for something that's going to give them nothing in return.
Okay.
And to answer her question more specifically is my programs do cover the work performed by subs. We still want to be on an excess basis. We still will go after the sub to make sure that they pay. Like a dozen reasons, we won't go over them today, obviously, but I have like 12 bullet points of why you don't want to depend on your subcontractors. And I've had it happen 3 times this week, is where the sub doesn't even have coverage for what he's doing for my clients. You know, so, you know, this one that happened this week is the guy was doing some roofing work. He's a handyman, but he was doing some roofing work for my client. Turned into a situation where we now have a claim, and we found out that the subcontractor's policy didn't cover roofing. So what good was having that client didn't have the proper coverage? He'd be paying for that out of his pocket.
Okay, so I have a question. If a builder winds up working with somebody who's not licensed, bonded, and insured as a subcontractor, do you cover? How far does that blanket, that umbrella work? How does that work?
My programs will cover uninsured subs, but you're going to pay the cost as if the sub did the work. So there is a higher rated class that's used for uninsured subs, whereas if you're using an insured sub, the rate basis is just a much lower percentage. Now, having said that, I know we're in a tough market as far as availability. We just we really discourage.
I mean, I would hope they're using people that are licensed, bonded, and insured, but we also know that there are handymen out there that you might just say, oh, well, hey, can you go ahead and take care of this while you're here? I mean, it happens. That's just the reality.
It does. You have a closing on Monday. It's Friday afternoon. I will say this. My big thing is I don't want the structural trades to be uninsured. When you're getting into the plumbing, the electrical, the concrete, we step in behind them. You got someone that needs to put some straw out or do a little bit of landscaping or come in and do some cleaning at the last minute little repairs to get it ready for a closing.
That makes sense.
It happens. You know, that they don't have insurance. We'll pick it up. It's such a nominal cost to even pick that up on the direct payroll basis. But there's just a lot of pitfalls with subcontractors, whether or not they're even insured for what they're doing. Have they paid their premiums? Is their policy even enforced when you have the claim? That happens a lot. The other thing that comes into play is the states that have the construction defect laws, and North Carolina is one of them. A new home builder is on the hook for 6 years. The statute of repose in North Carolina is 6 years, construction defect.
I wasn't aware of that.
So if you build a house in 2020, you're going to be on the hook till 2026. In South Carolina, it's 8 years. So there's some states where it just runs so far out. And this is for new home builders.
Right.
If you're a real estate investor or a flipper that goes in and takes an existing property and just modifies it or renovates it, you're not held to that standard. But the point is, 2 or 3 years down the road, you're going to have that plumbing issue or electrical issue where the first person that's going to get the phone call is the real estate investor, right? Or the builder, because
Yeah.
they're the one that sold the client. The client has no clue who did the plumbing or the electricity.
Right.
So our guys are actually held on the hook for quite a long time in new construction. So we're really concerned and want to make sure that these guys have insurance.
Well, and in 6 years, someone could go out of business.
There you go. Go
all
out of
kinds
business,
of things.
not pay their premiums, not
Right.
have the proper policy. And then, one of my commercials, the one that we showed down at TAG, but we couldn't prove who was at fault.
Right.
So when you can't
Right.
prove who's at fault and everybody has insurance, well, guess who it falls back on? It's back on the builder or the real estate investor. So again, that was a situation where my client fortunately had the proper coverage in place, and that turned out to be almost a $30,000 claim.
That was actually a very informative commercial because, I mean, that does happen.
Right.
Okay, everybody's covered. Oh, I didn't do it. Oh, no, I was in after that. Oh, they were in after I was.
Right.
And there's a lot of this.
Always,
You know.
a lot of denial. And even when you're pretty sure which sub pipe can prove who ran over the pipe, but I've had other claims, many other claims, where like the cabinet guy probably came in and dropped the cabinets down on some of the plumbing where the granite top hadn't been put on yet, so the pipes were exposed. Well, he drops it, messes up the pipe, just kind of covers it up, moves on,
Yep.
and then when they move into the house, you have a big issue with water going in everywhere, and the plumber swears up and down they didn't do anything, and in
Right.
some cases they didn't.
Right.
So, yeah, a lot of finger pointing that goes on, and again, the reason why you need a policy that covers work performed by subcontractors is we take that hassle off the client. Because without the proper coverage, the client has to chase the sub. They have to chase down everybody. In this particular case, or in these cases, we do the work for you. In other words, we notify our carrier and they take the lead. They're the ones. We still need the client's assistance gathering some information
course.
and have meetings, but the insurance carrier takes the lead. They're the ones that goes after the sub. And at the end of the day, if they can't, and it's really some high-tech stuff. I mean, it's literally forensic investigations that go on to take some of the with the determination of what happened. And sometimes
I
you
have
just
all
can't.
kinds of questions.
All right,
This
go
is
ahead.
really great
Right.
content. Before I ask, if anybody has any questions or comments, feel free to put them post, and Sandy will let us know. Do we have anything at this point, or
No, we have no other questions, but want to welcome Blaine, Paul, Vicky. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, folks, good to see you. So, all right. Oh, God, my brain's swimming. Okay, so builder's risk, you're covering during the build up until the build is finished, but you're
Right.
saying the builder's on the hook for up to 6 years after for structural and foundation. Is that correct? Am I understanding correct?
Well, it's general liability. General
Okay.
liability is what they're on the hook for the products and completed operations. So they're on the hook for the materials and the workmanship once the work is complete. So once they build the house and get it done, from a liability standpoint, they're on the hook for 6 years.
Okay, do you do 110s or 210 home warranties? And what would be the benefit or the point of doing that if they're already on the hook for 6
Right,
years?
that's a great question.
I think it gives buyers a comfort zone.
I would say 95% of my builder clients do have some kind of home warranty in place, like a
Right.
210.
Uh-huh.
And I have a good contact on a particular warranty company. If anybody wants that information, I can get it to them. I work closely with one of those companies.
Okay.
What those warranties do is actually deflects from some of the claims that become general liability. So I am a huge proponent. It's not window dressing. It's not just something to provide the client with some kind of peace of mind of, hey, we trust this builder. It actually helps the builder. And there are a lot of where the lieu of us.
Okay.
And it's like a deflection. It's an extra layer of protection. So I'm a huge proponent of the home warranties. They do bring value. So they kind of work in conjunction with each other. typically you're going to have, and look, let's face it, most home builders are going to go in and take care of the problems anyway, right? Those that care about their reputation.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of times they're just going to go in and say, yes, we're going to fix this, we're going to take care of this. So they don't even turn it into a warranty or general liability.
Right.
They just go in and fix it. But if you just get some of those situations where it's too far along, I wish they had like a, like those little books, fill in the blank for dummies,
Yeah.
I wish we had a book, Concrete for Dummies. And I'm not trying to belittle anyone, but people don't understand concrete is going to crack. A house is going to settle, and concrete cracks.
Yeah.
So you get these homeowners when they see this
Going
little...
back to Science 101 with expansion
I know, right?
and contraction.
It's going to happen, but they get this little crack that's like this big, and all of a sudden the house is uninhabitable, and they're calling attorneys, and attorneys go crazy with that. We deal with that a lot.
Okay.
So in those particular cases, we just follow the steps. We get everybody involved. A lot of times we get the state, whether it's South Carolina, we get the state to come out and do the inspection and say, hey, our client worked within the parameters, that they're within code or within whatever their standards are. That if our client works within those standards, we're able to offer a strong denial. So our insurance carriers, what I really like about the companies that I work with is we're not there to deny claims, because there are situations where my builder will come to me and say, look, and pay out the claim and roll over. Let's fight this. So our carriers will do their due diligence, do their investigation, and look at it. Every now and then we get into that situation where they say, hey, litigation is just going to cost us 10 times more than just giving them a little something to move on. But we'll fight those where we feel like the client's not responsible, and we will go after those subcontractors as needed. But to answer your question, the builder's risk just covers the structure while it's under construction. So that's just it's property covered. You're covering the house until it gets completed. Then turned into a hold from like a real estate investor turns it into a rental. Then you get permanent insurance or you sell it. Right. At that point, that part of the insurance builder's risk goes away. General liability sits out there. And again, if you're doing new construction, you got to go all the way through the statute of repose. Now, without getting too legalese, but something that's been happening, especially in South Carolina, is attorneys are using this continuous and progressive damage as a way to even null and void the statute of repose. So I'm getting builders, and they're now getting sued over some construction defects because the attorneys are getting the progressive and continuous damage clause to override the statute of repose.
So that's scary.
It is. South Carolina is probably, you have New York around the boroughs, you have states like California, Arizona and Utah and Colorado are tough from a soil standpoint, parts of Texas. Unfortunately, South Carolina is now in the top 3 as far as construction defects, and just carriers are pulling out left and right. In fact, I'm on a board or on a committee that's meeting with the DOI at the end of the month to address at the state level.
What's DOI?
Department of Insurance.
Okay.
I know.
You went into acronyms on me.
I know. Try to keep it. So, but no, and that's again where I'm really active in the industry with the home builders. We're working at the state level to work with the legislature to say, hey, your laws are being written or manipulated in a way that it's making it very difficult for builders to do business in your state. That's at the level you have to change it at. It's not at the carriers and changing the coverage. You got to get straight to the source and say, look, your laws are really putting us in a bad spot here, because it is a very unfriendly environment right now for builders.
So I'm going to switch gears just a little bit. I think we've covered builders pretty well.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about rehabs. Are you covering rehab?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Yes. Again, I was introduced to Anthony Moore, Professor Anthony, back in February of 2017.
He's Professor Anthony, for those that don't have the background.
Exactly.
He used to teach for Fortune builders. So, okay, go on.
And he's just, very had written some, just where he got the professor, very knowledgeable.
Yes.
So,
great guy.
Up until 10 years ago, I thought home builders were taken care of, and I found out they weren't, right? So it was the same with real estate investors and flippers. It wasn't until I met Anthony that he said, Mike, we just have a huge problem. Nobody knows how to class us. Nobody knows how to insure us properly. And there's just too many gaps and inconsistencies. And what he was finding is that even with a program that a lot of people were using, that within that program there were a lot of inconsistencies. So he's like, you really need to take a look at this area. So it took me almost 5 months to get Anthony on board for his program, but what he didn't tell me at the time was he was vetting me for a bigger picture situation. So it wasn't only to make sure I was there to handle his needs, but what I could offer over and above and beyond. So he'll tell you, put me through the ringer. Really, we're very careful. We spent literally 4 months getting his program in place. And the day after I got the program in place, he called me and said, look, I'm just going to start sending you a lot of contacts, a lot of emails, we're going to get a lot of phone calls. I'm going to want you to be part of a mastermind that we're going to start developing. But this is going to open up a whole new arena for you.
Yeah, and it has.
It has, and it was just like with the new home builders. It was an enlightenment in terms of I didn't realize how poorly these guys were being handled.
Right.
And again, without getting too detailed, the two biggest things I found was most of the rehabbers were being written on property forms. And property forms, if it's on a true property form, you have vacancy issues. And again, it's kind of like the subcontractor question. Let that sink in. How many
Dumb it down for those of us that this is not our house. So if you're a rehabber and you're doing a renovation, the property's vacant.
Right. It's vacant from day one.
Right.
So what you're going to have is issues with theft and vandalism.
Okay.
And then if it's vacant for a long enough period of time, coverage just goes away.
Right, because it's a higher
exactly, a higher risk. So what I found with them is they were being written on the wrong form, property versus builder's risk.
Okay.
And a lot of times the property was written on such a simple form, basic property form.
Okay.
That's it. If it fell outside of those 13 causes of loss, which doesn't include theft and vandalism, you're on your own. And what really upset me about that when I saw it is I would say over 75% of my claims that come out of builder's risk are theft and vandalism. That's the majority of claims that we pay. So not only are they giving them a policy that's super expensive, they're also excluding the most likely thing to happen.
Well, it's a crime of opportunity.
Exactly.
It's an easy hit.
So that was the first thing. Is they were either on some kind of reporting form where they had to report each month every time they were starting one of these projects, and then they would have to cancel it at some point. They were also another group were getting separate policies for every rehab. And I've got a client in Pittsburgh that was at the time doing 30 of these a year.
Wow.
He was getting a separate policy for every single project. It was just, the paperwork.
So you can do an umbrella policy for all the rehabs?
And I don't want to, and that's where,
maybe I'm not using the right terminology.
Blanket, yes, believe it, yes. It was not only the coverage they were getting, being written on the improper forms, very little coverage being offered, very expensive, but it was also the time involved, just the time going with that. It was insane how much time they were spending on these. And not getting very good coverage out of it at a very high cost. So that was the first big thing. And then the next thing was, again, on the general liability, they either didn't have work performed by subcontractors coverage, or they just had products and completed operations excluded altogether, which had no coverage whether they were doing the work themselves or the sub. Period. You're getting a premises liability policy pretty much just for somebody slipping and falling, right? The little kid going through the job site and getting hurt.
Yeah.
That's all they were getting. So you look at the gap there. So immediately the wheels started turning, and that's where I was able to develop the program with my builder's risk carrier. It's to say, look, why can't we treat these guys just like the builders? And at the time, even this particular company did not want to do it on a blanket basis. They weren't doing it on a blanket basis, but right at the corporate level was, hey, the majority of real estate investors are using lenders or money from an investor, right?
Hard money loans.
Right. But these guys are paying 14 or 15% interest, right, on a short-term loan. They want to get done and in and out sooner than later.
You better.
Right.
At
Exactly.
those rates.
Right. Exactly. Whatever those percentages were, and they didn't realize that. This isn't a typical construction loan where you're getting
that's your profit going up in smoke. If
exactly.
You go over on
Right.
your job.
And every month that you go past it. So what I was able to do is present my case that, hey, number one, the average hold time is about 5 months, right, from the time you get it and own it till the time you get it off your books.
Okay.
But there is a very motivated situation going on that you want to be out sooner than later. Obviously permits can slow you down.
Yes.
Historical.
Yes.
There's always these things
Yes.
that can weather, subcontractors, you name it. There's a lot of things that can affect it. But when I was able to go to the carrier and say, look, these guys won't get in and out. These are not going to be held for 12 months. That's going to be the anomaly. That's going to be the exception, not the rule. The sooner these guys get out, the sooner that they're out of that loan that's paying a huge interest rate.
Right.
And it doesn't mean they're going to do bad work, but
they're motivated.
they're motivated. And my builder's risk carrier isn't even involved with the completed operations, right? They're just covering the property. So I'm not saying that they don't care if the builder does a good job or not, or the real estate investor, but that's not the area of insurance they're worried about. So when I was able to show them that the vacancy issue, or the fact that it's going to be vacant, 4 or 5 months is doable. Because it's no different than a home builder, right? My home builder, average construction time is 5 to 6 months. Right. It's probably closer to 7 or 8 months, but 5 to 6 is probably the average. Custom home builders can take 12 to 15 months, so they're on the hook for those, in a lot of cases longer. So when I was able to demonstrate to my carrier that, hey, the real estate investors are actually in and out usually quicker than the builders, and that there's a motivation to get it done and get it done right because they're paying a high price. Plus, there's an appropriate rate that we charge. My rate is almost double for the rehabs as it is rehabs, and real estate investors is still about 40% lower than what the market's doing. So, develop a product, and like you said, on a blanket basis, and that's the value. I write you one policy that covers all your projects for 12 months. That's it. And we cover that project for 12 months. So whether it takes you 30 days to get it done or 11 months, we charge the same.
Gotcha.
It's one flat rate. It's based on per start. So we just gave them better coverage, right? A much better rate than they had in factor. We just took it from something that they're having to worry about and look at every month to you just go work.
Yeah.
For 12 months, and then we just true it up at the end of the year.
Very cool.
It takes about 5 minutes to do that.
Well, I think this was really great information. I appreciate you sitting down with me today. I was engaged. I thought it was interesting. You didn't lose me. My eyes didn't glaze over. So I think that's a good sign.
I know, right? Well, no, you had some good questions, and like I said, I tend to get a little.
Well, I know you say in insurance, and people kind of it's a dry topic, but I found this to be very interesting and educational, and I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And I'm actually very. You can see how. I got angry, when I saw how builders were being handled. It upset me to see how the real estate. I'm very passionate about it because it's something that these guys were getting or buying with literal no fault, or they were just calling the first guy that they either came across or knew that did their homeowner's insurance.
Yeah.
And that's where it goes back to the specialization.
Yeah. All you.
All me.
So having said that, how do they get a hold of you?
Well, probably the easiest way is I do have a website.
Okay.
It's www.mikestelljes.com.
This is the joys of being in the city.
Right when the supercharger goes by.
So,
it's STELLJES. And
I should have had a cue card.
that's all right. So it's just MikeSteljes.com, and it just provides a lot of information about who I am, what we do, the products we offer, some of the commercials that I've done, some testimonials like Anthony on that big bill that they did. So it gives them a good idea.
Any last takeaways you want to leave them with?
Again,
I think we covered a lot of really good stuff.
We did, and I appreciate you taking the time to do it, and for those that took the time to listen. No, I just go back to that same idea of clients need to really focus in on about 4 or 5 areas of where they need to find a specialist in that area. Again, whether it's an attorney that understands real estate law, whether it's an accountant that understands the construction method of accounting, a realtor that's going to do things like this and bring value and look outside of just what you're doing within your. How can you help?
It's just really important to me that I provide value and education and good content and service. But having been so transparent, I give up all my trade secrets.
Well,
well, not all of them. I have a few tricks still up my sleeve.
Right, you got a few tricks, but you know what? It's unfortunately, I think so many people get caught up in what they're doing for themselves and what they're doing and saying, okay, well, I'm a good realtor, and I want, for me, I've been doing this for 25 years. there's enough business to go around. There's plenty for me to educate my clients.
The more I give, the more I receive.
Right, and the more they appreciate.
Yes.
See, unfortunately, especially in my industry, agents used to hold it so close to the vest. They didn't want to tell what was going on because they said, okay, if I reveal a little, they're going to be dependent on me. And I've done completely opposite. It's like I want to educate you. Right, I'll educate you with as much as you want to know, because once I let them know exactly what's going on and how their program's put together and what the ins and outs are, they look at later and say, man, I really trust this guy because now I know what he's really doing for us. So it actually builds the relationship. And yeah, it's like you said, you might get you're giving out information or educating. You don't always, telling the client how to get builder's risk, versus a property form. I may not be the one that writes the business for them, but if it helps them get into a better program that saves them that huge claim or keeps them profitable, then so be it.
Well, it means that I'm providing additional value to my builders.
Right.
They're more fully covered. They're getting a better rate. That means they might be able to pay a little bit more for the land, or they might have a little bit more profitability, and ultimately that's the goal. So,
right.
But I appreciate you coming out today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Great
Thank you.
information. And I hope you guys are having a kick-ass Friday. Make sure you go out and make it productive. And we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.